So today, very lucky, joined by a special guest. Brian is the Regional Development Officer for the Royal Yachting Association. This week,
Scotland.
Scotland, Regional Yachting Association, Scotland. And he's going to be talking about our theme for this week, which is around social value and sustainability. So we're going to be talking, or Brian will be talking about the role that he undertakes working in yachting, but also his journey within sport more broadly, and some of the things that he's done around how organizations capture value beyond financial value. So obviously, the topic of this class is around finance, but we're also thinking about how organizations report upon their broader social and community objectives. Okay. So our learning outcomes this week, we're going to be talking about understanding of value beyond the financial value. So yes, you looked at finance documentation last week when we looked at balance sheets and profit and loss accounts. Okay, but what else do organizations do in terms of reporting beyond finance? So we're going to start talking about the idea of social value and how we can perhaps measure social value and social impact from an organization, but also explore what is meant by a triple bottom line. Okay. Okay, so triple bottom line, we're going to start with this as a concept. So when we talk about a bottom line for an organization, we're thinking primarily around how the organization has performed financially. Bottom line being, did it make a surplus or a deficit at the end of the year, a profit or a loss? Okay. But actually, there's an acknowledgement that organizations need to do more in terms of what they report upon. Okay. So not just from a financial perspective, but actually, what have they done in terms of their social impact? Okay. So have they treated their workers fairly? Have they paid them a fair wage? Have they created a positive culture? Have they done something within the local community? Okay. And they're also thinking about environmental impact as well, right? So we're actually thinking about organizations trying to do good things rather than just not doing bad things. Okay. So being proactive in terms of their impact and creating this kind of social impact and value. Okay. So our triple bottom line is our social impact, our financial impact, and our environmental impact. Brian is hopefully going to touch upon the kind of social impact from a sports perspective. Hi guys, come in. Okay, so we've got this kind of idea of three measures. We've got our economic value. We're going to come back to this later on in the module, but yeah, we're familiar with our balance sheet and our profit and loss account. We've got our social value, which we're going to talk about, and we've got our environmental value as well. Okay. So you're familiar now, economic performance. So this is where we're talking about what revenue we generated as an organization. This is just a recap, but yes, of course, we're talking about what we made ticket sales as an organization, our sponsorship deals, merchandise, okay, broadcasting deals, etc., etc. Okay, so we're all familiar with that now, following our class last week. But actually, then what else does an organization report on, or what else should they report on, which is where social performance comes in. And as I say, I'm very pleased to hand over to Brian. What I'd like you to do is, whilst you're listening to Brian, think about any questions you'd like to ask him. Anything that you think is interesting from, yes, a sports finance perspective, and thinking about some of the things around recording social value. But equally, Brian's going to share some of his story of working in sport. So he's worked across a number of different sports and been involved in numerous different programs which look at how sport can help improve lives, not just putting 11 people on a field and hoping they win, or whatever sports it may be, but beyond the pitch. Okay, so think about your own careers and what you're going to go and do when you graduate next year. What advice you'd like to ask Brian for how to forge a career in sport. Everyone okay with that? Okay, in that case, I will pass over to Brian. Brian has some slides.
Hello, everyone. I think it might be helpful to me first to know a little bit about you. So I'd like to know where some of you are from. So who is from Scotland? Okay. Who is from elsewhere in the UK? Great. European mainland. Anyone? Where are you from?
Spain.
Excellent. Hola. That's the end of my international language, probably. Anybody from the Americas? Where?
Washington.
Washington State?
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody from Asia? Okay. Where in Asia? India, China, India, Japan, India. Great. Any place I missed? South America. I said the Americas. I didn't quite ask you. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, cool. Um, do any of you know what you want to do after you get your master's? When you leave Sterling Uni from this program, do anybody of you know what you want to do for your first job? Anybody? Hand up. Anybody want to share?
Oh, come on, loads of you had lots to say first week. Come on, don't be shy. Loads of you want to be agents and all sorts of stuff.
Okay, agents. Anybody want to work for a national governing body of sport? Nobody? Okay, fine. That's all right.
Heather does, sort of, don't you, Heather? You sort of, well, it's not, yeah, go on. Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, job it.
Put work in.
Fine. What sports or physical activities do you enjoy or participate in? Shout them out.
Netball.
Football, netball,
Football.
football, tennis, baseball, softball? No? Soccer, okay. Cool. All right. Now here's one more question, and you don't need to answer out loud, which is fine because you're hardly answering out loud at all. It's fine. But just think about this one. What is your favorite movie? Just think about that one. And I'm not asking you for a list of the best movies of all time. Just what are your favorite movies? It's okay to like really bad cinema. Some of my favorite films are really bad. So that's okay. But file that one away for a little bit later. Andrew invited me here to speak today. We've had some interaction through Scottish Athletics, through my previous role, and just in a volunteer role. And he's asked me to speak to you about combining the concept of social and community benefit with broader concepts of finance and how we measure value. So I want to talk about that from my perspective, from my experience. Hopefully I answer your questions effectively, but obviously there'll be time to ask me anything else at the end. And I've always thought it's important to know where your information is coming from. Who's your speaker? What are their motivations? What's their expertise? What do they bring to the table? So you know what, you can sort of rate their and understand what they're saying. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm here. Is anybody familiar with Simon Sinek? We're starting with why. Nope. Okay. Great. He's written a book, obviously, and this is a screenshot from a video, which I'll share the link to later. The essential message from this is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So keep that in mind as we continue. And I will take Simon Sinek's advice and I will start with why. Start with my why. I'm a people person, and I think people are amazing. I think everybody has the potential to be amazing. I think everyone has something inside them that is unique, that is special, that can be exceptional. They have the potential to do great things. And I think sport and physical activity can unlock that potential. So I use those methods to help empower people, to help them discover that little bit of magic, whatever that is inside them, and to empower them. Previously, I've used fitness and coaching, physical therapy and sports medicine, and now I'm doing it through community sport development. So I believe in the power of sport, and I believe it can have a profound impact on an individual and on society or community if it's scaled up. So I'm trying to have social impact with it, and I want to help others do that as well, which is why I'm here. So that's where I am today. That's the sort of end of the journey, or journey so far, my journey so far. But let me tell you how I got to here. I would like for you to try to imagine a 12-year-old boy. Braces on his teeth, spots on his face, sort of a bowl haircut, a bit chubby, certainly not an athlete, smart, possibly nerdy, friendly, quick to smile, an easy target, not necessarily bullied, but sort of easy to push around, easy to poke fun out, certainly timid. So now imagine him playing American football for the first time. Now, obviously, that was me, I'm talking about myself. I played football all through junior high and high school, so for a total of about 6 years when I was young. And despite being just an average player, I got a lot out of it. One of the first things I learned was that when I was pushed, I could push back within the scope of the game. I didn't have to just sit back and take it. I could push back and defend myself. Again, within the scope of the game. I'm not talking about becoming a bully myself. And that gave me a lot of confidence. It also annoyed a lot of my peers, a lot of my classmates, guys I'd grown up with, guys who had grown accustomed to sort of push me around a little bit. And now, not so much. So I earned some respect from them, and I probably developed some friendships through that. As an adult looking back, that is my first experience with how sport and physical activity can change lives. I went on to excel in high school. I got involved in just about everything our school had to offer. I got popular. And ultimately, as a senior, I was crowned prom king, which sounds a little bit cheesy here. To be fair, it probably sounds a little bit cheesy in the US as well. But I always considered it the greatest compliment for my peers. And I'm certain, well, I can trace it all back to playing football, basically. And I'm certain I wouldn't be here speaking to you today if I hadn't had that experience playing football as a 12-year-old. I'd probably be in a cubicle staring at a computer screen. As football players, of course, our coaches wanted us big and strong. So we started lifting weights at school. And I found out that I really enjoyed it. I couldn't get enough of it. I started learning as much about it as I could, learning about different workouts, different programs, just being a sponge, learning about kinesiology, biomechanics, physiology, even though I didn't know what those things were at the time, nutrition, anything related to fitness. And I started doing that as a 14-year-old, and it's been a big part of my life ever since. Over the years, in addition to working out a lot in the gym, I did a lot of road cycling, a lot of road running, trail running, a few triathlons, and a couple of adventure races. So quite a lot of activity in general. Now, obviously, that's been beneficial to my physical health, my mental health. And I've already mentioned my confidence, developing friendships, and widening my social circle. And I'm certain I got other things out of it, like improving my communication, leadership, independence, things like that. And it led to a career for me. And hopefully positively impacting others with that career. So that's my experience. I'm not special, though. There are literally millions of other stories just like that out there where physical activity and sport have had a positive impact on people's lives. But that is why I believe in the power of sport. And that's why I'm trying to share it with other people. So I've talked about my career a little bit. I'll quickly cover that. Just a quick overview. And essentially, I mean, I'm here to talk about work, and I'm essentially here in a work role. So I guess I need to talk about it. But we'll see. It's not to give you the ideal version, because my path was certainly not a straight line, and I wouldn't advise you to do it like I did it, but maybe it'll spur some thought. So back in the US, I had a degree in kinesiology. So basically, sports science. I didn't study all the physical education side of things. It was more the scientific side of it. And my first job initially out of university was as a personal trainer. And I did that at least part-time for about 20 years. I was a personal trainer. I led exercise classes. I did some sports performance, strength conditioning, high-speed video, running analysis, bike fitting, and a lot of other stuff around that. I coached a lot of runners, some cyclists, a few triathletes. Yeah, like I said, anything and everything around that, basically. After just a few years of starting that, though, I decided to go back to school, and ultimately I became a sports physio. Not exactly the same as a sports physio here, but that's the best easy definition. So I worked in physical therapy clinics, and I also did high school outreach, as well as some colleges. So I go to colleges and high schools and take care of their athletes. And I did that for a total of about 15 years. That was my main source of income before moving to Scotland. As you can imagine, probably, hopefully, I helped a lot of people in those roles, helping people lose weight, run faster, run farther, recover from injuries, recover from surgeries, that sort of thing. But I was really doing it because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning. I enjoyed what we were physically doing, all the exercise and that sort of thing. The people that I worked with, the energy of those environments, that's what I was doing. I wasn't necessarily thinking about impact, at least not very often. I remember being at a continuing education course as a physio called The Biomechanics of the Cyclist. And it was led by a husband and wife team. Jeff was a cycling coach and a bike fitter who taught me later. Jackie was a physio also, and she was a professional road cyclist. Now, Jackie told a story about a race that she was in with her team, and she said her proudest moment was pulling her teammate across the line to win a sprint finish. And I thought, not win yourself, it was helping somebody else win. I mean, because Jackie was pretty tough. She held the world hour record for a while. Are you familiar with the world hour record in cycling? Basically, you get on a track and ride as far as you can in an hour. So she had the record. It's pretty prestigious in the cycling world. She had the record for women her age at one time. So she was a badass. But her proudest moment was helping somebody else. I didn't quite get it, not at the time anyway. Obviously, it stuck with me though. A few years later, it sort of sunk in. After a few life events, life changes, probably just getting older, I changed my way of thinking. I started thinking about legacy. I started thinking about my legacy. Now, and in these thoughts, I had this realization. My wife and I don't have kids. That's by choice. I'm not going to cure cancer or write a great novel or paint a masterpiece or lead a country. So my legacy will be the people that I help, the people that I empower, the people that I help to win. So that's become my focus. So in 2016, after coming to Scotland, I'm here because my wife is Scottish. She spent about 20 years in the States and then convinced me to come here, and we haven't looked back. We love it. So a few months after we arrived, I started looking for work, and I sort of fell into the role of club manager for Aberdeen Amateur Athletic Club. To be honest, I wasn't even trying that hard to get the job, but I got it. So it's a new career. As I implied earlier, my physio credentials are a little bit different, so I can't do that here. So new career. But now instead of helping one patient at a time or one athlete at a time or one small group in an exercise class, I was able to serve and support about 400 members of our club. So more impact is what I was thinking, and I was ready to get going. Now, early in my time at the club, I guess I was getting known around Aberdeen. People were hearing about me. I was involved in conversations. I was going to seminars and other events. And essentially, I was recruited to be the inaugural chair of Club Sport Aberdeen, so the local sports council or Club Sport Network. So they asked me to take on this role and create the organization, essentially. Actually, I said no initially, but I figured, considering the person who asked me and my respect for her, I should at least consider it. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, this could be more impact. I could reach more people through sport. So I took it on. I was there for several years. I just left a year ago in October. And during the peak of my time with the organization, we had about 90 clubs that were members, and that comprised about 20,000 people among all those clubs. So again, lots of impact. I thought it was pretty cool. Then a couple of years ago, I started looking for bigger paid roles. The club sport role was a volunteer role. And when I started looking for paid roles, again, I wanted more impact. I wanted to go beyond just one club. So I interviewed with several governing bodies, applied for a lot, interviewed for several, and they were all regional and national roles at governing bodies within Scotland. And I ended up at RYA Scotland, Royal Yachting Association of Scotland. And I'm Regional Development Officer for the North, so I cover Highlands and Islands, essentially. I should say that I don't know anything about sailing or windsurfing. Well, I know a little bit now. I didn't know anything when I got the job, but I had good club development experience, so they hired me. I have about 30 clubs that I cover, a few commercial training centers on top of that. And then I help lead on, or I either support or lead on some national projects, like creating our club development framework. We just had our conference last week that I delivered 4 sessions in. I'm helping with the sailing regatta for the Orkney Island Games next year, that sort of stuff. So that brings me to the present. So again, I believe in the power of sport and how it can impact people's lives. That's my focus. That's what I try to do. So how do I do that? Is anyone familiar with Changing Lives, the Changing Lives program? No, yes? Oh. You have heard of it? Okay, cool. So one person, awesome. I'm glad, because then I've got something to talk about. So it's a program for people who work in sport in Scotland, delivered by Sport Scotland and some of their partners. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. Do any of you like movies? Yes, obviously I do. So I watch a lot of movies. That's my thing to do in my own time. A few years ago, I kept track of every film I watched in a year. I kept a list. A couple of my friends had done it, and they actually have made a few films. So I thought, well, I'll see how I compare. So I kept a list all year long. There were films that I watched from start to finish. If I only watched partway through, it didn't count. But repeats did. And I watched about 84 films, something like that. So yeah, I like it. So, what are some of your favorite films? Grown-ups, okay. All right, everybody was nodding your head.
Space Jam.
Space Jam?
Yeah, classic.
Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption?
Midnight in Paris.
What was it?
Midnight in Paris.
Big Night in Paris?
Midnight in Paris.
Midnight in Paris.
Yeah. Yeah. Interstellar.
Interstellar? That's a good one. That's probably top 10 for me. Anybody else? Kingsman? Good one.
Avengers. Superman.
Cool. All right. So, what about your favorite sports movies?
Space Jam.
Space Jam again. I was like, there was one. What was the basketball game? What was over here? That's a good one. I like that one too. Anybody else? Goal? Any sports films? Any favorite sports films?
Chasing Mavericks.
Chasing Mavericks? Moneyball? Yep. Glory Road? Yep. Okay, cool. It's the one with yeah. Can't think of the guy's name, but I know I've seen it. Okay, cool. So I was starting to say I love films. Obviously, I'm lucky that my wife enjoys films as well. So we spend a lot of time together. And if you look at the Venn diagram of her taste and my taste, there's lots of crossover. However, sports films are not in there for her. She does not like sports films. All she sees is the sport. She can't get beyond that. So when she watches Rocky, well, she doesn't watch Rocky. If she were to talk about Rocky, it's a boxing film. Field of Dreams, Moneyball, baseball films. Rush, Le Mans 66, car racing films. That's all she sees. And on the surface, obviously, that's correct. But there are also numerous underlying themes, lots of other stuff going on under the surface. So Rocky, to me, is about a man finding self-worth. Sylvester Stallone today will say that it's a love story. Field of Dreams, spoiler alert, is ultimately about a relationship between a father and a son. Has anybody seen Bruised with Halle Berry in it? It's an MMA film on Netflix. Lots of hard-hitting, excuse the pun, themes. Redemption being one of them. Has anybody seen Hoosiers? Anybody in America seen Hoosiers? No? Hoosiers is probably my favorite sports film. It's about a small Indiana high school basketball team in the 1950s. Also a theme of redemption, a lot of stuff about family relationships, certainly an underdog story, which is probably the most recycled theme in sports films. Anybody watch Ted Lasso? Hey, all right. Good stuff. There are two very subtle references to Hoosiers and Ted Lasso, along with lots of other underlying themes about sport and the impact of sport, other than football. So all that is open to discussion, but there's certainly more going on than just sport. And it's said that life imitates art. Working in sport, we know that there's a lot more happening in sporting environments than just sport for sport's sake. More things are occurring besides scoring points, wins and losses, medals, cups, ribbons, that sort of thing. Those underlying themes. Top of the list probably are improved physical and mental health. Plus developing social skills, confidence, teamwork, communication, leadership, possible employment, decreased antisocial behavior, skill development, and the list goes on. Changing lives is a mindset. Intention being the key word, that's why it's there 3 times. Intentionally focusing on those underlying themes. Focusing on the personal and social impact. Improving the lives of the participants and those around them. Sport will improve as well, but the idea is to focus on improving lives to have a greater overall impact. Back in the US, I worked in sports medicine, as I said. So I worked in the medicine side of sports. Sports still occurred, obviously, and hopefully I had a positive impact, at least one athlete at a time. But the focus was on the medicine. It's the same here. Focusing on impact is not at the expense of sport, but to complement it and hopefully improve on it. Second. So improve on it as well as increasing the social impact. So basically focusing on the center of the diagram. Organizations deliver sport for social impact. So the center of that diagram. That's the focus through changing lives. So that's the concept. I was in cohort 3 2 years ago of Changing Lives Champions. I was in the Leaders Program last year, and I'm actually helping facilitate or deliver this cohort 5 right now. I suppose I had a little taster session before that because Scottish Athletics had a Changing Lives champion, and he created a program to take out to clubs. So in my previous role, I was able to experience that. So my experience was that I already bought into the concept. I already believed in all this. But going through the program, I was able to get the language and the tools to bring that to life, as well as having this network of people, these other Changing Lives champions. And I've said many times over the last few years that group of people, they're my tribe. Those are my people. They're the group of people in Scotland with whom I feel the most connected. And if you want to ask questions about the program, that's fine. I can take those later. So that's my approach. That's also the approach of RYA Scotland. It is certainly embedded in what we do. It might not be obvious all the time, but it's certainly there under the surface all the time. And it's also the approach of about 200 other Changing Lives champions, plus their managers and part of the Sport Scotland staff. We're intentionally focusing on the outcomes versus sport for sport's sake. Now, my hope would be that you all agree with this and want to go out and change lives. Use sport to impact people. Take sport and all its benefits to more people out in the world. But that's your choice. The good news, from my perspective, is that whether you want to do that intentionally or not, because you're using sport, you're still going to have impact. So I'm going to be happy anyway. But that's just me. However, this is where we're going, at least in Scotland. This is where we're going as a community. In 2016, when I became club manager at the athletic club, there was a second role created. It was the Pathways Development Officer. Essentially, it was a performance role. And both roles were funded the same way, through the club, through Scottish Athletics, and Sports Scotland. 4 years later, when those contracts were up, Sports Scotland wasn't funding performance roles anymore. So we created a community development officer. So I remembered it this time. So we were able to get funding. Now, we didn't create it just to get the funding. That's the direction we were going. We were just fortunate that our values aligned, basically. So it's been going on for a while. This is where the environment here in Scotland, probably throughout the UK, that's where it's going. So despite your motivations, if you're going to work in sport in the UK, that's probably how you're going to work. So why is that? Well, first, it's the right thing to do. Everybody should be able to experience sport and all its benefits. And hopefully you believe that, but I'm not going to preach. Otherwise, there are probably lots of reasons. It's been, from my experience, it's probably mostly related to funding and finance. So I can at least give you some insight based on what I've seen and heard relative to that. I don't have all the answers, but again, I can tell you what my experience has been from mainly a governing body and a club perspective in Scotland. As you all know, money's tight for everybody, especially so in the aftermath of the pandemic. RYA Scotland is funded mostly by Sports Scotland. We get 75% of our funding from them. About 15% comes from RYA down south, the English version or the international version, and then 10% we make on our own through our events. We are currently in our review period for our funding for the next 4 years. We go in Olympic cycles. We've been told, we won't know until the spring, but we've been told to expect the same amount as the last 4 years, which with price increases, that's like a decrease in funding. And it's my understanding that that's pretty much the same throughout the UK for all governing bodies. And that is because, at least in Scotland, because Sports Scotland's getting the same or less money from the Scottish government. So it's trickled down. So how do you get more money? Or how do you get the same amount of money in this case? Well, Olympic and Commonwealth medals only get you so far. When money's tight, they don't carry as much weight. Some organizations still will rely heavily on participation numbers, but they don't really tell a story. And if participation goes down, like now when not as many people can pay for sport, you might not have your numbers. I know in our case, we had goals to increase our numbers and we didn't meet them. We had the same, we had a flat line. So how can that be justified? How can more money or the same amount of money be justified? My answer is you have to tell stories and frame things a little bit differently. More qualitative stuff. So I'll give you the example of RYA Scotland. If you want to look at the actual report that I'm going to refer to, you can use the code there. So we started doing impact reports annually. I think we've done two. I think there's two so far. So again, we're telling stories. We're giving qualitative information as opposed to numbers. We've talked about getting more people with disability on the water. We've done some open days, usually paired with some education, just to get more people with disabilities into sailing. We've done a lot of work. We tried to do a lot of work with women. We've had a women-only race coach level 2 course, so a coaching course. With all women. I've been able to facilitate some women-only tasters in Channery, which is Fortrose near Inverness, which were successful. We're also monitoring our gender, and we're actually intentionally trying to get closer to at least a 50-50 split, women to men, males to females. We're looking at that on our board, on our committees, and on our staff team. We've got work to do. We also have we're engaging our youth. We're working toward having a youth panel or something like that, but we're not telling the youth in our community what we're going to do. We're asking them what they want. So we're listening to our community. We also have a board position for an under 25 person. So, and we're doing some work with sustainability as well, raising awareness, that sort of thing. So overall, we're trying to engage more people with protected characteristics. and giving a voice to people who historically haven't had one in our community or in our sport. And we're also looking at Sport Scotland and other government targets and seeing how we tick those boxes. We're not creating programs to tick the boxes, but we're looking at their strategies and see how what we're doing fits in with that. Funders like to hear that. They like to hear that you're ticking their boxes. So I can talk a little bit about clubs as well and where they get more money. There are funding sources out there. There is some money from Sport Scotland. They do have funding programs, mostly coming from the National Lottery. Some governing bodies have little packets of funding as well. We have a coach subsidy program with which came from Sport Scotland, but came separate from our regular funding. There's a separate application, and that is for people in rural areas, women and girls, and I forgot the third group. That's just one example, though. Of course, there's small pockets of money from local authorities, leisure trusts, sports councils, that sort of thing, and then charitable bodies. In most cases, one of the questions that will be asked is, so what? You want more equipment? You want more coaching, education? You want to put on more sessions? So what? What does that mean? What is the social value? Whose lives are truly being impacted? Are you just getting more money, more people on the field? Or is there an impact? So there's going to be that so what conversation at some point. And even the corporate sector is going to be asking that because they've got that community social responsibility funding. So they're going to want to give back to the community, like the wind farms and that sort of thing. So they're going to want a good answer to that, so what? From a club perspective, I can talk about Aberdeen AAC. Excuse me. We have a para-athletics section, a lot of frame runners and athletes who race in wheelchairs. And we actually have one of the athletes that races in a wheelchair. She's actually on our board. So that group does have a voice on our board. We have some community sessions and community programming. So with that started when I was still there. We looked at our membership and we looked at their postcodes. We put them on a map. And the interesting thing was not where they came from, but where they didn't come from. And we weren't hitting those areas in Aberdeen that were high on the index of Scottish index of multiple deprivation. So we were basically appealing to the people from the affluent areas of Aberdeen. So what we did was go out into those communities where we weren't serving, develop a partnership, find a facility, and take free athletic sessions to them. It's grown. I know at one point we had about 200 kids a week that we were working with around Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire. And we actually have other sessions in places like West Hill, Inverurie, that are paid sessions, and they subsidize the cost of the free ones. So it's sustainable. But in both these cases, we've gotten funding for it. Things we're already doing, but that's how we get the funding. We're also a menopause-friendly club. So that's just a couple things that we're doing. So to access those funds, my advice comes down to, well, two top tips that I talk to clubs about that I've experienced myself and I think had the most benefit. One is charitable status. Have you talked about?
Yes, they've done charitable status, yeah.
Okay, so you know what a SCIO is? A Scottish Charitable Incorporated Organization. I think that, well, first of all, that's the trend. There's loads of athletics clubs that are becoming SCIOs. Club Sport Aberdeen, when I was there, we created it into a SCIO. Obviously, Aberdeen AAC is. Sailing clubs are doing the same. There's a lot more SCIOs in sailing clubs now as well. And I can tell you from my experience, in 2019, I was filling out loads of grant applications. And I got jack squat, hardly anything. 2020, we were a SCIO, and I probably got 5 to 10 times more, into 5 figures. Certainly, it was over 10,000 pounds year one as a charity, and there are other benefits as well. If you've talked about it, they've talked about the positives and negatives. But I've seen lots of impact from that. a great way to get more money for clubs. The second way is essentially to change the way you think about asking for funding. Change the way you think about talking to people about money, potential sponsors, potential partners, and funders. So Andrew has a copy of this if you want a digital copy of PDF. We can take a photo if you like. But the main emphasis, don't worry about all this down here now, but the main focus is who, what, and why. So as I said earlier, according to Simon Sinek, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People generally focus on what we do. We do athletic sessions. We do football sessions. We get people sailing, whatever that is. That's the activity. Everybody in sport knows what they do, but they don't always know why we do it or who they mean to serve. The essence of this, excuse me, is that you're serving the people with these strengths. You're leveraging these strengths to have these outcomes for these people. So you're leveraging their strengths to deliver what those people need. That's the why. And that's how you're going to get funding, generally. I've talked to some funders, and they say if you've got a theory of change and it all makes sense, you're going to get the money. You'll go to the top of the list at least. And this doesn't matter. You can be doing tiddlywinks sessions. If it ticks these boxes, you'll get your funding. I think the best way to explain it is to tell you what I say to clubs that I go to now. Clubs want to buy boats and sailing clubs, right? Want to buy boats, want to get more people in the water. So they want to get more dinghies out there, sails, whatever it is. So when I talk to them about this, I tell them that the boat is paying for boats. Excuse me, the club is paying for boats. The funder is paying for impact. Again, they don't care what you're doing here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the final question, the final area that Andrew talked about or asked me to talk about was to discuss measuring value, which I've touched on a little bit. But to answer a little bit more directly, in my opinion, it's something that we in Scotland are not very good at. We don't measure value very well. We're good at participation numbers, but that doesn't mean value. There's not a lot of data out there. Sport Scotland just had a report released in the last few weeks on the economic impact of sport. And UK Sport or Sport England either had a similar piece of research or it was the same one and they just released it earlier. I can't remember for sure. I couldn't find it again when I went to look for it. But in my opinion, it was too high level. It was helpful for them to talk to government, but it doesn't really help people at like the governing body level and certainly not at the club level. SFA did some research a few years ago, really good piece of work, but again, it was for football, so it didn't necessarily translate to other sports, and I couldn't find that to show as an example either. There are qualitative reports out there, like I shared from Our Way Scotland. We're not the only ones that are doing that. There is a trust called the Ellen MacArthur Trust that did a very good impact report. In fact, I think we stole some of their stuff because they do sailing for children who have been treated for cancer or undergoing treatment. But in my opinion, there are opportunities out there. We know we have impact, and there are tools out there to measure. We just need to put some money and some effort behind it. Here's a quick example of what could be done. This, in fact, is my dream. In the U.S., I said I worked in healthcare, and I encountered loads of people who said the U.S. has the best healthcare system in the world. Well, my first thought was, well, if it's such a great healthcare system, why are we so unhealthy? Because we're also some of the most unhealthy people in the world. So if I take my cynicism a little farther, I would say that there are no profits in prevention. And in the US, the healthcare system is for profit, essentially. It's a business. So, in the UK, it's a little bit different because it's National Health Service, right? So, prevention is actually savings. We know we improve physical and mental health. We can prevent illness and injury and disease through sport. We need to study that, get some really hard data behind it, lots of data, put behind that, and go to the Scottish government and say, look, we prevent all these things. Give us some of that NHS money. That's my dream. I'm not going to be able to do it, but maybe one of you can do that. So if you do, just remember, I gave you the idea. That brings me to a little pitch from RYA Scotland. When Andrew and I first started talking, we were talking about research and data, and I've had some conversations with Paul DeMeo and Chris Fullerton. And our CEO, Finlo Kattier, was an academic, so he thinks it's a great idea as well. So we had a conversation with the guys, and we have 2 research projects to put for you if you're interested. So I'll just give you the titles. If you're interested, I guess just talk to Andrew, and then we'll go from there. So the 2 titles are Measuring Impact and Social Return on Investment in Sailing, Windsurfing, and Powerboating Clubs in Scotland. Okay, so social return on investment for water sports, essentially. The second is Exploring the Concept of Blue Health, the mental health benefits of participating in activities on the water, specifically sailing, windsurfing, and powerboating. Okay, so blue health or mental health, or social return on investment. I haven't really talked about the sport much. One of the things that drew me to it, one was the strategy that RYA Scotland has. Lots of really good stories, lots of exciting stuff, lots of potential in there. And related to that is the power of sailing. And what I'm always thinking about when I'm going out to clubs is, because we do a lot for kids. Yes, it's called the Royal Yachting Association. There are some yachts, but most of us in Scotland, most of the people in the sport in Scotland are doing small dinghies. So it's like one person on a boat, maybe 2. And we start with young kids. So we start at 8 years old. So what blows me away is just seeing like a 10-year-old out in the water in a dinghy by themselves, managing all the lines, watching the weather, watching the surface, watching the other boats. Now, I should say there is somebody in a powerboat nearby watching them, so they're safe. But I think as a 10-year-old, there's no way I could have done that. So it's a powerful sport. All those things about confidence that I've already talked about, leadership, communication, creativity, all those things come with our sport. So it is a powerful sport. It is a potentially impactful sport. Another thing that I always have in the back of my mind is, because we have this perception of our sport, that it's just for rich people. And we need to do better at stopping showing that, to be honest. But one of the things in the back of my mind is always, well, do rich people sail, or are rich people, are they rich because they sailed? All those skills that they developed, did they use that to leverage? They leverage all that to become rich? I don't know. Probably some of both, to be honest. So anyway, powerful sport. I'm coming to the end. So I get to give you homework now. Not one groan. That's fine. It's supposed to be fun homework. First of all, I have business cards. If you want, you can connect with me. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me. If you get my name spelled right, you're going to find me. As far as I know, I'm the only Brian Paulman in the world. If you Google me, you're only going to find me. You're not going to find anything very exciting, but I'll be the guy you find. So if you want to connect with me, you can do that on LinkedIn. My email and phone numbers are on my card. That's my work number. I turned it off when I'm not working, so don't call me at 9 o'clock at night because you won't get me. But yeah, if you have a question after today, feel free to make contact. Second, as I talked earlier about the Finding Your Why video, this QR code takes you to that video on YouTube. It's an 18-minute video. It encapsulates the main message from the book. If you like to read, if you want to read, buy the book. If you want to just get the gist of it, short, sharp, watch the 18-minute video. So, I encourage you to watch the video and then write your or create a why statement. What is your why? What is your motivation? What do you believe? What are your values? Why do you want to work in sport? So watch the video, write your statement, and share it with somebody. Doesn't matter who. Friend, partner, classmate, Andrew, me, mentor, advisor, doesn't matter. Share it with somebody. The idea is just to do this just for your own understanding. What are your own motivations? And it might actually help you engage with other people. It might help you connect with other people. And then finally, watch a movie. Find a sports film. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe one you've seen before. Watch it and be curious and look for those underlying themes. See what you see. Again, just to raise your awareness a little bit. All right. That's me. That's not me. That's me done.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Has anyone got any questions for Brian? Hopefully people have been thinking about what they would like to use this opportunity to ask Brian as he is handing out business cards. Yes, question at the back. Oh, you want a business card? Any questions? Otherwise, I will just ask questions of Brian on your behalf.
Nothing? I don't know about working in a governing body or changing lives, being an expat in Scotland. We can talk movies. Illinois.
Okay, that's my question.
That's your question. Great.
I don't know what.
Okay, guys, listen up for a couple more minutes, and then we'll have a break. I know we're here for a while. So I have a question if no one else has one, which is, Brian, these guys are obviously going to be, well, touch wood, graduating next year, and you're getting your grades this afternoon, so we'll find out how far you've got. What would you recommend or advise to students that are looking to step into the sports industry? And guys, if we can listen up to the answer, and then we'll have a break, and you can chat after that.
It's a bit challenging because like I said, I sort of fell into it. What was it again?
What would you recommend for somebody stepping into the sports, or looking to step into the sports sector?
I would talk to people. If there's a role that you're thinking about, find someone who's doing it and talk to them. If there's a particular sport you're working in, you want to work in, talk to somebody in that sport. Do not be limited by your knowledge of the sport. As I said, I didn't know anything about Sailing Windsor. Now, some clubs or some sports governing bodies won't be that open. If you're not a cyclist, you might not get a job at Scottish Cycling, for example. Don't know. I don't know what they'll be like. I'm not saying that you won't be. I don't know what they're like. That was just an example. But don't be limited by your knowledge of a particular sport, because you're going to bring a lot to the table other than sport knowledge. Now, if you're going to be a coach, yeah, you got to know about the sport. But if you're going to work in development, I think you need to know more about people. Have good communication. And that's going to be more powerful than anything else.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions that we'd like to ask Brian? Come on, this is a great opportunity to ask somebody for some advice. It's a great connection to make. I'd also say, by the way, talking about graduation, you'll need to do your dissertations first. Brian's presented 2 excellent projects there that you could do for your dissertations if you want to, so bear that in mind. Do make the most of connecting with Brian. Again, any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Don't be scared.
Anybody disagree?
Yes. There we go.
So, what do you think our attitude should be when we are approaching to a sport which we don't know anything, but we find it interesting in a way that we can, find motivation for other people to do their best in that?
What do you say to these people?
yeah, like what should be our attitude towards them and
Like
to
if
the
you-
work that we'll be doing.
Like if you go to a governing body that you don't know about the sport?
Yeah.
Okay. Ask a lot of questions, don't make statements. Because if you make a statement and you're wrong, well, you're caught. But if you're asking a question, they don't know what you know. And that can give you an opening. So again, it's about communication. It's about having a conversation and connecting with people more than anything else. So I would start asking questions and see where your skills match, where your values match. Does that make sense? It's a bit of a cop out. It might sound like that, but if you don't know the sport, you've got to approach it a different way. And what I did was I was comfortable with club development, and what I've said so many times over the years is that all clubs are all the same and they're all different. So most clubs are having the same challenges. So if you've got experience helping one type of club, for example, that's going to be scalable to another club, most likely. As I talked about, a lot of clubs are getting charitable status, regardless of what type of club they are. So yeah, as I said, there's a lot of similarities. So find out how you tick the boxes of what they're looking for. Hopefully that's helpful.
You have questions?
We talk a lot about communication and what we do in dealing with our clubs. So you really want to have good communication skills. You don't have to know the lingo necessarily. You have to be a good listener, be good at questioning, don't use why too much. You can use why too much, but what I try to remember is TED: tell, explain, describe. So use those to start questions. Tell, explain, describe, as opposed to why. Tell me why you're doing that. Tell me how that works. Tell me more about that. Explain this to me. Again, you're asking questions instead of making statements, so you can learn what everybody wants, and then again see where you fit.
What's your favorite film?
My favorite film, I have two, because I can't decide which is which. A Few Good Men and The Martian. And there's probably a handful of films that are tied for the next spot.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, Brian. Let's give a round of applause.
We'll walk Brian out and we'll have a 10-minute break. So we'll meet back at 4:15. Okay? Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kate's great. She was at our conference last weekend.
Yeah.
Saturday. And she was
That's
really
where it's like
build guys.
these.
Great.
It's the one where it's like this guy gets killed on a military base in Cuba.
Yeah.
See you later. Yeah, no, I made my own little table. So I just doubt I did it right. Yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna make that shit. So, like, I like I put it in Excel to make the tables, but I really just the copy and paste it in Word. But I did the SBS, but I ran it. I did the hair and I did that for
Wait for
What is this?
I always have my notebook out there. It's the voice. That was so American TV there. Yeah, but I don't know. I can't remember. I'm always spread out. I always have
Nobody comes on.
we have.
So this is what I put them as I set them up. I got the means.
Nice.
Mom helped set it up, but I also need to edit it. I separate the strength and the speed because in strength and positive you want the n to be a bigger number, but speed you want it to be a lower number for the improvement. So I literally just did the average or the mean of the beginning and end in the SPSS. I put it in here and then did the equation to find the difference, and I'm going to bullshit it because I had no idea what we're supposed to run. But like I had to split them up.
No, I think yours is this one. I want to say
Yeah. So like I split them each up like the high school training and stuff. So like
Okay.
if I click that, I literally deleted them from the SPSS because my mom and because I knew there's a way to do it. I just don't know how, and I am not using my brain because I hate this stupid shit. Stick something up. Swear to God.
this is when my doctor would be like, no, we're done.
So it's supposed to go down to 120, but I just deleted the 2s and the 3s, and so it would only run this information. So I would only have that. But and it was the same thing with the output. Sorry, my language is always like really bad today. It's weird. Why do I have to control myself? I thought you guys actually cut. I actually just deleted. I thought you guys cuss here all the time.
We come to the professional practice classes. We're not supposed to swear.
I thought y'all cuss here all the time.
We do in the right circumstance.
Well, this is very circumstance.
Like when you're out and you're drunk, not in class.
My sister, my brother's sister and I, she cussed the absolute least out of us. My brother and I cuss like a storm. Like I think I've gone. I don't know. It might be worse than my brother. I'm not for sure. It depends on the context. Like with my brother, when he's playing video games.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh yeah. But the thing is, if I'm also playing video games, I take on my brother's role. Because I'll be cussing. I'll be dropping the F word like every other word. Because I'll be pissed at the game.
Victor, what will we do? Here? We'll discuss it here.
I think I like the second subject,
Second one, yeah.
but I think it's
A bit hard,
it's
but
I think
unique.
yeah because it's too difficult to find a lot of information about that because it's I think it's new.
Yeah, but itself could be a gap.
Yeah. So yeah, I like for that reason
Nice.
because it's new.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe challenge could be try to find a lot of information about that.
Yeah, and I
But-
think he will like it.
But we can propose many
Yeah.
things about that.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. So
But we need to be careful the word that we
yeah, maybe we can ask him in the next class about what are our limits, our strategy. So
it's not only fair.
yeah, and could be, but it's our viewpoints. If we are agree, we are not agree,
Yeah.
because there are many points. So maybe we can start to try to find
How should I search?
I think it could be more about dialogue, about I think the main point is if the person that's woman or man need to eat something.
Having criteria.
To eat
Mm.
yeah, I like that.
You knew that. I'm not sure. But last week he talked about diversity. So other than like the, but but sure, but I think all organizations have same criteria. Otherwise,
They must establish
yeah,
like a criteria.
in Olympics they can, but give them more.
Yeah,
That's why.
yeah, but the problem is that I am trying to think, like it's a must that people don't have that criteria. They need to do something else.
Yeah.
But that's a good point because we can try to explain our
No one can prove that. I really think I'm psychologically. You can write this. This guy is psychologically.
Oh yeah,
we
yeah.
have a
I
question.
submitted it this morning.
And that's a good point. Now,
It's just 3 points. Of his course, he submitted without contributing.
Like you can share the screen.
For the one I found on Facebook, and I started reading it. It's fun. Yeah, it's just like they read you like a kind of books. You like start the beginnings of them, and then you're like, okay, now it's not really worth it because like the beginning sounds really good, but as it goes on, it's like, eh. But this one is actually like, oh, it's so good. What's going on? But it's just like I really I think this online. I would never like find these books. But I like when it's a physical book, I'm like, it's a I have a genre of book I read, which I prefer those. Like this like a world. I guess like completely different genre. I don't read that shit. I don't read that. I only read that shit online. What? Am I gonna get in trouble if I do that? So I don't get in trouble. I don't give a fuck what happens. Oh, hold on. My fucking it's so stupid. It's so fucking stupid. Sorry.
About the election, Trump being elected.
It's so fucking. They're idiots. They're complete idiots. Dude, that's my problem. I was like a Trumper to say like that. What?
You're not going back to America.
I don't want to go back ever. I'm going back for Christmas, but actually no, I wasn't planning on it originally, but I last minute did because it was actually cheap enough. Yeah, I was able to get a round trip for like. Yeah, especially like so.
That's crazy.
I leave the 11th and I come back the 6th. For what? Oh God, no.
We should clear
Dude, yeah, it's about 1,200 would be like. Yeah. I think it's because of the time I chose. I chose like the day, like the 11, a lot of people, the 6. So yeah, a lot of people. Okay, yeah, I think it's like I don't know. It depends on the days I think you choose. Because if you get like closer to Christmas and New Year's time, they get so expensive. I was going to go like I was thinking about maybe Netherlands or my shit was, but I'd rather be home.
Have you seen it?
No,
Yeah, I have seen it.
Brilliant.
like I have to change
I'll post that.
It was at the end where he was just like, yeah, that can't go to it.
Nice. Still only D2 though.
I know. I was.
There was a period of my life when I was a single man and no commitments where I would go through a couple of seasons through that.
FC chairman.
Yeah, I done it yesterday.
Well, don't tell me that.
I still got it done.
It's like that you're a manager of like, and you go through all these different kind of stages.
Been there, done that. Like 3 years ago.
The chairman FC.
That's when you were here, but like, I've
Fine. That's how we actually got one of our dogs from the orchard. No, yeah, wasn't it? We got from the orchard. Yeah, my mom named him. We named him. Little fucker. But no, and he was so good. Like the white fur, like the color of his brain was found him in a yeah, so I'm pretty sure he's like and the other was a border collie.
so hard to keep.
Big Jack and I have like jacket.
What's your
Did you just like just do it just because, or? You're such a bad influence. I just
I renamed my stadium the DIY Stadium. Right? You know, like give me 150,000 pounds.
Okay, guys, we'll start back again. So hopefully it got chips. You always eat something. There's some sort of food eating going on at this table. Right. So hopefully you found that useful. I do encourage you to. I know. And I'm sure Brian would admit this, sailing perhaps isn't the most exciting of all sports, but I do encourage you to take him up on the offer to connect and potentially do your research, your dissertation, using a partner, a sporting partner, for a number of different reasons. One, because your research is going to have real impact, so you're actually doing something that a sports governing body want to find out, okay? So you're actually helping solve a problem. You're going to, over the course of that, you're going to be advertising yourself and your skills. So getting to know Brian, when you come to look for a job, if there's one with a sports governing body, it always helps, okay? So it's also just good for connections, relationships, and getting that kind of experience as well. So do have a little think about those two projects that he suggested, and I would encourage you to reach out and connect with him. One thing I would say is that what he was talking about, knowledge of clubs and being able to translate that to other clubs, also applies with sports. So once you often see somebody get a job with Scottish athletics, they might soon end up with Scottish swimming or rugby or cricket or football. Okay, so once you're kind of in that sports governing body world, it is much easier to move into a sport that you're really, really passionate about. Okay, so even if that sport isn't your passion at the time, getting a foot in the door and starting somewhere else. Okay. Right. So we've been talking a little bit. Brian was touching upon social performance and social reporting and how organisations think about reporting. So he was talking about some of the impact reports that they produce at the RIA Scotland and some of the things that they would do. So one of the things you might think about doing if you work for a sports organisation and you want to try and report on some of the value is thinking about some of these different metrics, okay? So we've got what are the engagement and participation rates, so measuring how many people are actually participating in the sport itself. We've got community outreach programs, so reporting on the initiatives. We've got health and wellbeing initiatives, diversity and inclusion efforts, and contributions to education as well. So thinking about things beyond the sport itself, right? An example of a sport that are reporting on their impacts, quite a good one, is Basketball Scotland do a lot of work around using basketball as a way to reach people that they might not typically have been able to access the sport for whatever reason. Have a look at how they report on their impact, their social impact in some of their reports. Some good diagrams on screen there. The second one here is a concept called social return on investment, which we're going to come to, but this is based on the social return of investment on sport in England. So, for example, if we spend £10 million on sport within England, how much is that going to return to us in health benefits to the NHS, etc.? Okay. Is sport inherently good? Yes or no? That looked like it hurt. Did it hurt? You're okay? It didn't look like it hurt, yeah. Okay. Is sport inherently good? What do you think? Sports. What are some of the good things about sport? Do you need to go to the doctors, or we're okay? You're okay? Yeah. Okay. Is sport inherently good? What do we think? What are some of the pros and cons of sport? What are some of the good things that sport does? Good for your mental and physical health. Yep. Good.
Good for socializing.
Good for socializing. Absolutely. Yep. What are some of the other good things about sport? The sport industry.
It's able to teach you things.
Sorry.
It's able to teach you things.
Yeah.
Like where like kids are developing, like how to take direction, how to work with others.
Yep. So social skills. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. What else? Yep. Transferable lessons. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Anything else? Builds character. Good. Okay. What about the sports industry more specifically? So, thinking about having a sports club in your community, what would be some of the good things about that? Brings people together. Community cohesion. Yep. Civic pride, like pride for having a city, yeah, or a city or a country. What else? Tourism, great, excellent. So people coming to a city or a country because of an event. Yeah, absolutely. The income of finances from that. What else?
Tackling issues such as discrimination, homophobic.
Yeah, good. So being used as a vehicle for wider social issues. Yep. Anything else you can think of? Okay. What are some of the bad things about sport? Breaks your heart. Certainly does. Certainly does. What else? Yes, good. So environmental detriment.
Like for like big games, like I think there's like a place in Russia where they made for the World Cup, but now it's not even used. And
So
they took out like a wetlands or something there.
yep. Okay. So maybe uprooting environments. I think the Brazil Olympics as well. There was a lot of kind of uprooting of community and environments. Yeah. So detrimental from an environmental perspective. What else? Risk of injury. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Not always good. Some people get hurt pretty bad from playing sport. Yeah. Politics and corruption. Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Doping and cheating.
Cheating. Yep. Yep. Perhaps it creates bad role models in some respects. Yep. Anything else you can think of? Yeah. So some of the other side of the coin from what has been mentioned. Okay. Good. Okay, so we've got some negative consequences. So sports organisations need to think about this when they're thinking about their impact, right? So you can't just report on all the good stuff. You need to think about some of the negatives that come with sport as well. So obviously, a lot of organisations are motivated by more than money than they are the kind of sporting integrity. You might have kind of focus upon the elite aspect of it rather than the kind of the wider benefits. So we also spoke about the kind of health benefits, but actually there could be detrimental impact as well. Might have kind of negative outcomes beyond that as well. We've got businesses being criticised for thinking only of the profits that they make, ignoring the social consequences of their decision making and the outputs they deliver. So we've got some examples here of sport being used to promote unhealthy products. So we've got advertising here for cigarettes. Okay. When we think about the issue of tobacco companies, on the one hand, there's profits to be made, but on the other hand, significant evidence that links smoking to lung cancer and heart disease. So although sport is healthy in terms of getting us to play sport and being healthy in the physical activity aspect of it, it has a very close relationship with certain types of sponsorship. Got other examples here. So in some cultures, sport is very heavily linked to kind of drinking alcohol, heavy use of tobacco companies as sponsors, hooliganism, gambling companies as well. So these all have kind of negative social consequences, and it makes sense to encourage sports clubs and associations to think about their overall impact. So they can talk about all the good stuff they do, but they perhaps also need to think about what kind of detrimental impact they're having within their local communities. So I think you mentioned most of these things. We've got community engagement, social impact, economic contribution, so the example of tourism, but also perhaps employing people within a local area can be a good impact. Identity and pride, environmental initiatives, role models and values. But on the other hand, perhaps sponsorship with controversial sponsors. We've got long day. Economic impact in terms of displacement and uprooting people from local communities, gentrification. So if you think about London, the Olympics in London in 2012, large numbers of people were uprooted in the East End of London, and when they rebuilt this kind of housing, those people then couldn't afford housing there. Okay, so they weren't able to stay where they were living. Environmental footprints, cultural and ethical issues, and also fan behaviour as well, something we need to think about. Okay, we're going to have a quick look at how do you think about measuring social value.
Whether it is intended or unintended, all of us every day creates impact. Some of this may be positive, while some of this may be negative. But how do we know what impact is being created? And how do we ensure that what we're doing is creating a positive change? Social value is all about identifying the effects or impacts that people experience as a result of our activities. It also helps us to understand which of these changes or impacts are most important to the people experiencing them. Whether you work for social enterprises, impact investors, private business, public bodies, or any other form of organisation. By listening to stakeholders and understanding what is important to them, we're able to account for the value that we create. And by accounting for this value, we can ensure that our resources are effectively allocated to create more of the positive and less of the negative. By accounting for the social value that we create, we can amplify the voices of the people that we affect and make better decisions. Decisions that can help us achieve our personal and professional objectives, decisions that improve the lives of people, and decisions that can create a more sustainable and equitable world. Based on 8 key principles, Social Value International brings together members and partners from around the world, all with a shared ambition to change the way the world accounts value. Because we believe that together we can increase people's well-being, improve levels of equality, and create a more sustainable future for all.
Okay, so important to think about, as we say, the negative things that we're doing as well as the positive things. So when we come to reporting, we actually have an accurate picture of what we're doing. One thing we need to think about here is how do we actually improve something if we don't measure it as well, right? So thinking here, take Brian's example, he's doing sailing. They think they're doing a great job of encouraging people. They think that they've, got fantastic outcomes from the benefits of people doing sailing. But actually, there's no way to know whether they're doing a good job unless they try and measure it, right? So they need to try and get some data to understand what kind of an impact that they're having and try and report on that. But at the same time, they can't just report the good stuff, right? They also need to think about what are some of the negatives that they might be creating. Probably less so for a sport like sailing, but if you think about a football club, for example, they might have a number of different negatives associated with it, okay? So social value of sport, we need to think about the importance of sport to individuals and communities. We need to think, for example, about the physical and mental health benefits, educational development, community spirit and cohesion, all the good stuff that you mentioned before. And what is it about sport that causes this to happen and why? Okay, so if we try to think about this in context, so we're trying to understand, manage and report on the social, environmental and economic values. So going back to our idea of a triple bottom line, okay, the 3 key areas in which we want to try and report upon. A sports organisation might include participation in sport enhances an individual's confidence. Okay, so we want to try and report that in some way. So we might try and come up with a way that we can measure somebody's confidence before they start an activity, what it looks like halfway through the activity, and maybe try at the end of the activity as well. Do they feel more confident than they did 6 months ago before they joined the organisation and the club? Okay. Living next to a community park, providing opportunities to exercise and enjoy nature. Living next to a football stadium. If you live next to a football stadium, but you weren't a fan of the club, actually it could be quite a negative experience. There could be a lot of rubbish and litter and social unrest. Okay. We've got things like emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So think about the environmental footprint here. Antisocial behaviour on fans. Okay. So we also need to think about how we measure these things and how they're going to be different from reporting on just the financial data that we're thinking about. So Brian mentioned this idea of a theory of change, which is how do we use the thing that's special about our organization to create change for the people that it's set up to do. So we've got our inputs, we've got our outputs, and it creates our outcomes. Okay, so I want you to think about this as an example, right? So we've got City of Edinburgh Council is going to invest 7% of its transfer budget on cycling, okay? What are going to be the inputs and the outputs of this, and then latterly the outcomes? So I want you to have a little think, write it down, chat in your group about what these three things are going to look like, okay? So what are the inputs of this project? What is actually going to change as a result of it? And what are going to be the outcomes, okay? And try and think about the difference between the output and the outcomes. So think about what might be the result of the project, but actually why are you actually doing it? Does that make sense? Yeah? So have a little think, see what you come up with. You might need to think about what the difference is between outputs and outcomes. Yeah? Have a little think, write it down on a Word document or something similar. What are you guys thinking?
Trying to find the difference.
Yeah, okay. So the difference between an output, what do we think an input is? Guys, in this situation, what would an input be?
The money.
Yes, the budget is going to be the input. What would the output be?
Like a cycling lane.
Brilliant. And what's going to be the outcome?
The benefits.
Great, exactly. So have a little think about that and try and think about this as a kind of a structured way. What are the inputs, outputs, and then latterly the kind of broader benefits? Okay.
Yep.
Started with you, Andrew.
I was thinking last time. Yeah.
Guys, she has had little sleep. She's had little sleep.
So you don't just press like upload.
I don't know who's upset a couple of times. I don't know what.
Yes.
Through a party.
Charlie, project.
Two games. You can go for the
Just one trying to get you're going from the input to the output. What are
Yeah, that's the thing. But that's basically this one is like
Yeah. But that was
But could be that the album.
Yeah.
think about it as a project? I spent
I'm producing sex.
That's the
But you have to pay like after 30 minutes, you have to like pay like a certain amount of
Why? What?
So they actually make money on it.
Yeah.
What you're doing on your mouse. That is being used. I know how to
You're on holiday.
It was actually pretty nice.
Yeah, I've had a good time.
Well, we missed you. I get on with this way.
Oh my god. Sure.
What is promote?
the other one is breathing.
Why having some problem? Okay, so yes.
Honestly, that's it.
It could be human resource. Yeah. Could be, maybe they're. It may be the output.
You could go on.
Break somewhere.
Yeah. That is
Yes. Why? Why?
Oh, was it?
Like changes was efficient. So it's just about connecting the dots and saying why you're doing something. It sounds pretty simple when you're doing something.
What do we got 10 o'clock or 5? Send me the
Hello. How are you?
Y'all are like peers and students. He's an adult.
Okay, so I'll remember.
Actually, I was so
The council. It's support.
when he told us what it Exactly. Like they have like I don't know. I should probably write this Yeah, I know.
The use of cars.
Was actually going to change.
So the outcomes are okay, guys, we'll get your thoughts then. So, I'm conscious of time because we're also going to be talking about your second assignment. They came out.
Wish they'd waited until the end of class. So, right, you've got. Okay, hold your excitement. Let's get through this, and we can start thinking about the second assignment. Okay, so you've got your. I really wish they hadn't done this during class. You've got your inputs here. So you've got people designing and building bike paths. Okay, so that's going to be a cost. That's going to be an input. You've got the cost of materials themselves. People promoting bike path use. Okay, so they're going to be inputs. You've got your outputs. There's going to be more cycle lanes, more paths. You're going to have increased visibility and awareness of the bike paths and more promotion. So it might be better signage. Okay, and then the outcomes are perhaps going to be intangible things. So the meaningful change here is who, what, why. And actually, if we have a look, we've got the cycle path investment. That's going to increase the amount of cycling. Okay, who is it going to impact? Well, people of all ages cycle, and why? You're going to be gain confidence and competence when it comes to cycling. They're going to become more active, improve health, improve confidence, congestion, and environmental benefits. Okay, I'm going to give you another one. And if during this time you want to ask me about your grade desperately, then we can do. But have a little think about this next one. So we've got another scenario for you here. Daytime swimming lessons run by schools during term time using qualified instructors provided by West Lothian Leisure. What are going to be the inputs, the outputs, and the outcomes here? Okay? I'll give you 10 minutes to have a think about it. Okay?
Let's just try this.
So have a little think about this activity. Try and refocus now about social value and sustainability. You're unlucky. Okay.
I was trying to find the average. I did good.
Okay.
But yeah, not happy, but happy. Yeah, it's so close.
I know.
2 points.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
I should have read it.
But
That could have been the 2 points.
it could have been. Also, what I would say is 68.
The second assignment. I've never been literally.
Do you know what? This master's, for example,
It really does.
people want to get the best score in class.
It's like
But
I'm pleased with it, given this whole dilemma. And then I just put it in my report. It's okay. Budgets. To A and B and B to the
Well, we can tell them.
no. There we are. It's okay.
Oh my god, yeah, he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did actually upload as an Excel file. Because I was open to you can actually open it and
The same that we talk.
It's okay. And then he said, mentioning the growth purpose of No, it's not an actual
Yeah, you would have done. If you'd got all the numbers right in your budget, it would have been a lot more. 50 is a lot. I know you're right.
Where is it?
It might be. I can choose to reset the I think you probably be better off focusing yourself on
I don't know how.
See how you get on. You might feel differently, but I would.
go down in unique. No, this is like
I don't have my glasses on. I was like, seriously.
So I think in this situation, what you've done is if you
That's okay. I think it's like something to do with.
it's very descriptive.
Very quick, guys. Whereas what we do kind of even though it would be involved in an analysis of numbers that would be
Students' budget will be, but this is kind of so it's trying, yeah, so it's trying to you're right. You're remind me. Okay, so we're think ahead. I'm conscious of time. So we've got our second theory of change here. Okay, we've got our daytime swimming lessons. What did we come up with? Some inputs here. What do we think would be the inputs? Swimming instructors. Yep. Lifeguards. Good. Our inputs here going to be swimming guards, instructors. Sorry. Receptionists potentially. Yep. Swimming pool hire. Good. So we're actually going to need somewhere to swim. What are going to be the outputs? Sorry? Yeah. Lessons. Yeah. 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 Okay, so we've got inputs, pool time and instructors. We've got our outputs actually being the number of sessions that take place, number of participants, number of contact hours, and then the outcomes. What's the meaningful change here? The meaningful change is going to be more people able to swim, hopefully, increased confidence in swimming, okay, and that might lead to health benefits, etc., etc. Okay, so it's trying to think about what are the resources that you're going to need. So try and think about the tangible things that you're going to need, which are going to lead to intangible outcomes. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on the rest of this because I'm conscious of time. I will include all these slides though if you want to have a look. But I'm just going to spend half an hour talking about your second assignment. Okay, so you've now got your grades to your first assignment. Hopefully you're happy. If not, I apologize. Sorry, I wouldn't have really wanted them to come out during class time, but that's the way it is. So thinking ahead to your second assignment though, this is going to be worth 60%, so you can still, if you weren't happy with your grade, a very good opportunity to try and put things right with your second one, okay? So what we're going to get you to do is get to grips with Off the Pitch. So if you can all go to offthepitch.com. If you weren't here last week, you'll need to sign up for an account. If you have now already got an account, please just log in with the login details that you created last week, and we're going to get you to do some little exercises just now, okay? Okay.
Expecting 65.
Huh?
Is expecting 65, 70.
Yeah. Okay. Has everyone got logged on to Off the Pitch? If you need the address, I'm just going to pop it on screen just now. Okay, so you're going to go to log in and plug in your details that you used last week. Okay, so once you're logged in,
you're going to go to the My Accounts button and press the comparison tool. And this is going to bring you up to the main bit that you're going to need for your assignment. Okay, so what I want you to do is choose 2 clubs from different leagues and have a think about comparing their financials. Okay, so it could be a club from the English Premier League and a club from League 2. It could be a club in Spain and a club in Italy. Doesn't really matter. Just get to grips with changing the details on the tool. Okay, so remember, if you want to change your teams, they just give you these 6 to start with. You just click on the logo and then the cross button, and then choose who you want to add in by clicking the plus button again. Okay, so it could be Coventry City that you're interested in comparing with. Somebody name a club. Liverpool. Hearts. Hearts. Let's do Hearts. Okay. Then you can compare the details between the 2. Why do you think we don't have any details for 2024 yet? They've just come out. Or they haven't come out yet. But yeah. Sorry? So their financial year, maybe they haven't published their accounts just yet. Yeah. Okay, so get used to changing the teams in here. And now remember, you can change the parameters as well. So at the moment, we're looking at turnover. What does turnover mean? Turnover. Total income. Yeah, total income to the organisation, to the football club. Okay, now we can change that if we want to. Maybe we're not interested in looking at turnover. Maybe we're interested in looking at how much they make on a match day, right? We click that metric and then we scroll down to show data, and we can actually see, rather than revenue, we can now see match day income. Okay, so we can compare Coventry, who are in the Championship, with Hearts, who are in Scotland, the SPFL, and we can compare the match day income between the 2. Why do you think the numbers are quite low for 2020 and 2021? COVID, good. So when you're doing your analysis, you might need to take into account why some of the numbers are the way they are, okay? So you can also look at it in a graph. If you scroll down, you'll see it in a graph format as well, a comparison between the 2. So from this, we can actually tell that Coventry had a higher level of income on their match day, and match day will be ticket sales, merchandise, any food and beverages they sell in the stadium, okay, than Hearts, okay? So get to grips with that, have a little think about that, okay? So you can add teams in here as well. So if you want to add up to 6 teams, for your reports, I think we're going to be asking you to compare the details of 6 clubs, essentially. So get used to having a think about 6 different clubs at one time and what the data is actually telling you here. Okay. In terms of the assignment itself, right, you're going to be working as a financial analyst for a major firm of accountants and advisors specializing in the sports sector, okay? Now, your company has been approached by a wealthy overseas client who wants to buy a British football club, okay? At this stage, they're very relaxed about which club it is that you are going to suggest them, okay? So a wealthy person wants to buy a football club. They've approached you to ask for recommendations on which club to purchase. Now, the consideration here is that the wealthy person wants to buy a club not like Roman Abramovich and lose lots and lots of money over a period of time,
but actually they want to buy an asset that they think is going to be financially beneficial to them. Okay, so the club needs to, when you come to your recommendations, you need to think about clubs that are operating well or come up with a case that makes sense. So even if you think it's a club that is underperforming financially and has capacity to grow and develop and is perhaps not utilizing all of its assets particularly well at the moment and there's profit to be made, whatever it is, you need to argue your case as to why you think this is a good club to purchase. Okay. So the first part of your report to this wealthy investor is to identify the club that you want to purchase or you would recommend they purchase and provide a brief background on the club. So this is going to include some reference to the club's history, its sporting performance, and as appropriate, its broader social and political role. Okay. Think about things here that you would want to know if you were buying a house. All right, that's probably the best comparison I would make. If you were buying a house or a car, right? Think about buying a car. What would you want to know about the car, right? You would want to know that it's got a CD player or 4 wheels, okay, right, or Bluetooth, whatever it is. What are the assets that's going to make that an attractive proposition to somebody buying it, right? So if it was a house, you'd want to know how big is the house, okay? What other assets does it come with? Does it come with like a shed? Does it come with a garage? Okay, so thinking here about the football club, what are you actually buying? What would you be getting for your money? And thinking about all the parts of the club, not just the men's first team. Okay. You also need to try and place it in some geographical and hence financial context. So what we're thinking about here is something you might think of as what league is it playing in? Okay, is it playing in the Scottish League? Is it playing in the English League? Is it playing in the Welsh League? Okay. Thinking here also about if you were buying a club that has good transport links and people might potentially come and visit as a tourist, okay? Or if it is based in London, is it going to attract a wealthier clientele of people, okay? So thinking about the geographical location of the club as well. The second part of the report is going to be your financial analysis of the report itself. So we're going to ask you to use Off the Pitch as the tool to do this. But bear in mind, the information that Off the Pitch uses on its system is information produced by the clubs themselves. So the clubs submit their accounts as part of their annual report to Companies House. Off the Pitch take that data and they compile it so people can compare and contrast with one another. So think about, although you're getting it from Off the Pitch, the original source of the information. And you're going to think about the financial performance of the club over the last few years. I'd recommend at least 5 years, okay? And think about the narrative that surrounds the club around that. Try and think about using a club where there is full data available. So don't choose a club that doesn't need to disclose information to which you can't say anything about, okay? So don't try and choose a tiny, small club. Think about clubs where there is actually information for you to think about and critique. You should also try to avoid using clubs like Newcastle United or Chelsea, who have been bought in the last couple of years, because there's going to be a lot of information in the public domain about those types of clubs. So avoiding that, I'd also throw Manchester United into that as well. You're still going to have about 80 clubs to choose from. So as a leading, you got a question? Yes. That'd be a terrible investment. So you've got to think about the other 80 clubs in the UK that you can choose from, okay? So as a leading financial analyst, the key element of your contribution will be the quality of your discussion around how well the club has performed financially, okay? And why you are recommending them, okay? Even if you're saying that they've done very poorly, but you think there's potential to grow them, you need to come up with a narrative or an argument as to why you think they would be a good purchase, right? Sorry, one thing I should also say about this financial, this is going to be where, much like your first assignment, the bulk of the marks will be 1, okay? So much of it's going to be around your financial analysis and discussion. Think about the metrics that you're actually using to measure, okay? So we looked a minute ago at turnover and wages or match day income. Okay, thinking about what are the metrics that you are actually going to use that tell the story that you think is worth the investor knowing. So think carefully about which metrics you choose and why they are important. So don't just say they've got the biggest revenue. Well, what does that actually mean to an investor? Why does that make it a good investment? It's going to be down to your quality of analysis at this point. Okay. The client is also a great believer in Einstein's mantra that not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. Okay, so what we're saying here is not this information that's provided isn't the be all and end all. Okay, financial reports have weaknesses. We looked at some of the weaknesses last week. There is also literature about the weaknesses of financial reporting on Canvas from week 7, I believe. So you need to think about how to critique financial documentation. So think about some of the key things that we've spoken about. They're historical documents, okay? They are not accurate at the time that we're thinking about them, okay? They're also going to be slightly biased. Clubs have got different forms of reporting, etc. Okay? You need to go? Okay. So thinking about how do you critique financial documentation, okay? So you're using financial documentation to build your picture, but you're also saying why you don't think that that data is the be-all and end-all, and why else you think that organizations, the weaknesses of financial statements. That section needs to draw upon the literature that I've highlighted. It says week 7. I think it's actually I think it is week 7. It says week 6. Okay, I think it's week 7. So you need to draw upon the literature that is provided to critique financial information. Okay, if you don't use that literature, you're going to lose some points there. So potential structure, and certainly how we'll think about grading, is the quality of the introduction, the background to the club, the financial analysis and discussion, the overview of the usefulness of financial information, and the conclusion. So when you do your overview of the usefulness of financial information, okay, yes, you can talk about why it is useful, but also remember to critique it. What you're going to be graded on, 4 key areas. So the clarity of the club background and context. So thinking about your words and the weighting. Okay, think about the fact you've got 20% of your grades for that section of the report. Thinking about weighting, presentation of the financial analysis and discussion, the critique of the financial documentation is worth 30, and the structure, referencing, etc., is going to be worth 10%. Some bits and pieces for you to think about. Consider all of the questions, so don't ignore any of the sections in the report. So make sure you do talk about the background to the club, the financial information, the usefulness of the information. Remember, you're not being asked to value the club, although it wouldn't hurt to know how much you might be asked to pay for a club. So having a think about what that number might be, or benchmarking it against what other clubs have been sold for. Think about why somebody should purchase it as well. So, like, what is the argument that you're actually making here, and the issues with it as well. Again, think about the metrics that you're going to be using. What's going to be the most useful? What might the investor actually want to know about the club, and how can you demonstrate the value to them? Sorry. Demonstrate you actually know what the metric means. So if you talk about wages to turnover, talk about why that is an important metric to use. Okay, show me that you understand what you're talking about. Okay, and then think about the clubs that you want to compare the financial information with as well. So you could choose to make the case that you think West Ham would be a good investment, but then don't choose to compare it to League 2 clubs, because it's not going to make sense, right? Think about clubs that it makes sense to compare to. So choosing them, that could be from different leagues, but they shouldn't be from wildly different leagues. Okay. And don't forget to critique the usefulness of the information. Okay, so to get you using this, think about some of the complexities of using off the pitch. So if you plug in those 6 clubs, what would relying on just the tell us what just relying on the financial information does tell us and doesn't tell us about those clubs. So if you have a go at putting in Wrexham, Chelsea, Barcelona, Newcastle, and Tottenham, and think about some metrics you want to use. Yeah. What does relying on financial information not tell us about these clubs?
Yeah.
I can't find it.
They're not on there. They're not on there. Okay, well, don't do Wrexham. Just ignore that I said that. Choose another club. Choose Leighton Orient. Leighton Orient. Okay, choose Accrington Stanley. They're definitely on there. I just saw them. Yeah? You know them from FIFA?
Documentary.
For the report. You want to make sure you compare it against England as well. I'd recommend Yeah. So make sure the clubs you're comparing with. Sorry, just to clarify, when you're choosing the 6 clubs, right, in your report, you're recommending one, but that is based on your comparison with other clubs, right? So you're reporting to the investor that you recommend Newcastle, well, not Newcastle, because they're not Newcastle, but Tottenham, but that's based on your analysis compared to Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, etc. Okay? Not Man United.
It was a good show because they've got a brand new
Why would you give away your
Mine would be
So he's not giving away these like big guys. Obviously, it's not seeing his analysis. Why? I didn't even need to. I just got like.
that I wasn't I would pick Watford.
Yes.
Can't we just compare with
You can compare to 2 or 3 if you want, but I would recommend
So also assuming I'm taking 6 London clubs and I want to pursue but right now they're playing Europa, but I can also give this an argument saying this is a potential Champions League.
Yeah, include that as your narrative. You know, their numbers are going to be perhaps lower than Arsenal.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah.
Can I also say that it's a London club now? What do you want to accept that?
You would be losing marks.
You. So what it's not.
Does it make sense? Yeah.
Where what the place is, you know. He made it personal, right? You shut up. Andrew. And
in your report, I would recommend you
choose similar types of clubs. Does anybody have any questions? Yes? For this year? They're too small. Maybe they don't have to disclose it. So you choose a club that
You choose.
you would say I think it makes sense. It doesn't have to be.
No, just use single screen.
Maybe expecting a lower.
How are you? Have you got logged onto it? Have you got a connection?
I mean, state
No, not really.
I guess with them, yeah. See me last night. I was going to I was at your ship watching my
There he goes. Boss just said. Hello. Yeah, but it's
Oh yeah.
Big again.
The German clubs are.
Get home.
I don't care for any teams though.
Yeah, well, that's where your financial analysis is.
I hate
Unfortunately,
I
do it as
don't
part
like
of
that.
sports finance.
I don't like to be this way.
I really need to be
Wow, the Masters is really. That sounds really deep.
It really was.
Yeah. I absolutely think
You can get lower marks as well. I make comparison.
Yes. You might need to. You might choose a
What do you think we need to include at this point?
That's where the financial
And I'm like, oh, this makes
Or craft, you know, can big more. No. For the qualification.
but like,
The rest of them just don't want.
Thank you.
Sound like that.
shut up.
Okay. Anybody got any questions about the assignment? Yes. Yes.
That was my.
Yes. A couple of things just to refresh in case anyone was confused, right? So you're recommending one club, okay, based on your financial analysis, but that financial analysis is probably going to be when you've compared it to other clubs. So it's good to use other clubs as a reference point. So if you've chosen, you know, whichever clubs you've chosen, say that actually they've got a very good turnover compared to X, Y, and Z. So you can use it as a comparison, right? They don't have to come top in all the metrics, but as long as you have a narrative around it and an explanation for it. Just to recap, it should be a UK club that you're choosing, okay? So choose a British club, okay? And the number of metrics that you choose to use is up to you, okay? But think about your word count and actually what's going to be most meaningful. Okay? Yes. If there's enough financial information. Might not be big enough. You also have to declare their finances. Right, okay, if there's no other questions, then you're free to go.
They're looking for that.